Joining me now is Sarah Palin herself, former vice presidential nominee in 2008. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm honored.
So you had dinner at the White House last night.
I did.
Tell us about it. How did that happen?
Well, President Trump had called to invite just to touch base, so asked me to get to D.C. and we'd be able to chat over dinner, and asked if I'd invite a couple of friends.
So you brought Kid Rock and Ted Nugent?
Jesus was booked. So, yes, I invited my buddies, Kid Rock and Ted Nugent, some bold, courageous, all-American dudes who I knew would have good conversation with the president and get to express a lot of good middle-class, work ethic type issues and policy proposals that they could all relate to, and that's exactly what happened at the dinner.
There's an interesting picture of the three of you out right next to the portrait of former First Lady Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, I think the picture says it all. Yeah.
So let me ask you, we're approaching President Trump's 100th day. It'll be a week from Saturday. What do you think? What kind of grade would you give him?
I'm obviously extremely thankful that he has been elected because, so many of us in America knew that the status quo had to go, and we could not afford another term of Obama via Hillary Clinton's presidency if she were to be elected. So very thankful that Trump was elected, thankful that he understands that Americans expect America to be great and to be strong in order for the world to be more peaceful and more safe, more secure. So very thankful that Trump is fulfilling a lot of the promises that he made to lead, not from behind, but to have America lead from up front, letting the rest of the world know that, we expect peace in this world. We don't want to have to intervene in other nations. We don't want to have to intervene and try this regime change throughout other lands. And we can get to that as long as America is safe and secure and is a leader on the globe. And that, to me, is Trump's mission, which I appreciate.
But they have called for regime change in Syria.
Well, I think what the objective is, though, is to not have to intervene and tell any other country who should rule and how they should live and whether they should have a democracy ruling the people or not. And we're able to, like I say, get there by leading, as an example, having our own porch swept, if you will, in America, before we're over there telling other countries that they better sweep their porch. We got to get it together here in America, be safe, be secure, be sovereign and solvent, so we can be that shining light, that example for other countries.
Are you concerned at all about all the Goldman Sachs executives that President Trump has put in his administration? Just as somebody who's talked about how the status quo has to go, how the swamp needs to be drained, a lot of his supporters are surprised, I think, that there are so many Goldman Sachs executives in the administration after he made such a campaign issue out of it.
Well, I can really appreciate successful businessmen and women, though, who have strong work ethic and made good decisions in order to do well for their companies. I am such an opponent, though, of any kind of crony capitalism.
Yeah, you were critical of him for the Carrier deal.
Well, I was firing a warning shot, wanting to make sure that the Trump administration kept in mind that much of the constituency, much of the base is expecting that the swamp will be drained, and that there will not be any kind of embrace of crony capitalism. So with the Carrier deal, I wanted to make sure that the president, his administration, was reminded that we expect an even playing field. We expect government to not pick winners and losers, not one company over another like Carrier or some other, and not accusing them, though, of favoring Carrier over another company, but wanting to make sure that we're not even flirting with disaster in that arena of crony capitalism and letting government pick winners and choosers and creating some too big to fail businesses.
I have to ask you, Russian bombers have twice this week flown off the coast of your home state of Alaska.
Yeah.
U.S. military officials trying to downplay it. as nothing out of the ordinary, but there are many in Washington who are alarmed and think that Putin is trying to send a message. What do you think?
We should always be alarmed when we get wind of what Russia is doing right off the coast of Alaska. One thing that we really need to be cognizant of, and this has always bugged me, that people have not appreciated Alaska's strategic location on the globe and how important we are when it comes to playing our part to help secure our union with our location and with our resources. People don't understand that Russia has for years now been physically, literally flagging undersea plots of land with resources, claiming resources that are actually belonging to the U.S. They're Alaskan resources undersea. We have the minerals, the oil, the gas reserves underneath. Well, Russia has been really aggressive in flagging those, claiming those. And under the Obama administration for 8 years, we never fought back. We never said, hey, get out of our territory. Those are ours. So now I think with the issue coming to light of how close Russia is to Alaska, to our resources, and what they're doing to try to intimidate, to try to send a message to America, and to literally be trying to claim some of our resources, I think people will now become more aware and start demanding of this administration to, not literally, but start fighting back and start claiming what is ours.
I have to ask you a question, and it's kind of sensitive, but you are in a unique role in being a strong woman who worked at Fox News Channel as a contributor. And I normally don't cover a lot of media stories, but obviously the upheaval going on there with the CEO and its biggest star ousted because of sexual harassment, not just an issue at Fox News Channel, but an issue across the country. And it seems to be, with what happened with Bill O'Reilly, really a change in corporate culture in terms of what is tolerated. What do you make of it?
Well, I think the key there is that you said I used to be with Fox. I used to be with Fox. Corporate culture there obviously has to change. You know, women don't deserve, they should not ever have to put up with any kind of intimidating workspace. At the same time, if a woman believes that she is being intimidated and harassed, she needs to stand up and do something about it, not stick around for a paycheck for years and years and years, and then after the fact, complain about what she went through. As a strong woman, I say, you know, we should feel more empowered than that, and we should, you know, take a stand and get out of the place, or, you know, blow the whistle on the whoever is the perpetrator doing the bad stuff, so that the culture will change. But yeah, obviously things are changing quickly at Fox. There are some great people who are there, though, and I appreciate that, you know, what Fox News does as CNN, you know, adding to the discourse and to the debate, which is a healthy thing for the society. You know, more power to the good things that Fox News is doing. But yep, culture had to change there.
Did you ever witness or experience, God forbid, anything like that at Fox?
I wouldn't put up with anything that would be perceived as intimidating or harassing. And
but you said you're former, so I wonder, was that part of the reason you left?
You can ask them why I'm no longer with Fox. You know, I'm not gonna speak for them. My contract wasn't renewed. That's the line.
I don't want to be a jerk, but it sounds like you experienced something.
I just, you know, it was just time to part ways and you know, get out there in I guess a more diverse arena to express views and to speak for the public, and that's what I've been able to do now.
All right, well, I'm not going to push any farther on that, but Governor Palin, we always appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Appreciate you, thanks.